Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we're going to be talking about a very exciting blockchain called the MatrixChain. And to do that, we have a very special guest. His name is Steve Deng. He's the professor at a very important university. So thank you so much, Steve, for coming on and talking about MatrixChain today.
Thank you, Brad. It's my pleasure.
And just a bit of background on Steve as well. He's quite an outstanding achiever. He's an overachiever. He is not only is he the chief AI specialist and scientist, but he's also, as I said before, he's a professor at Tsinghua University. But he's also has a doctorate, very impressively, from the Carnegie Mellon University. He has also co-written and authored more than 50 different papers. That's impressive in itself. He's also partnered in the NVIDIA partnership. He's won a professor award, and also, more importantly, he was in charge of designing machine learning algorithms and hardware architectures for the Matrix blockchain. So welcome, Steve. You have a very impressive list of credentials. I didn't even read out all of them, but thank you again for being on the channel. Let's get started. There's so much to talk about. This chain, I have not read many white papers this complex. So in a nutshell, what is MatrixChain?
MatrixChain is a new generation of blockchain. Basically, we use artificial intelligence to reshape, to rebuild the foundation of a whole blockchain so that it can be faster, can be easier, can be more robust.
Wow. So AI is obviously a very important word at the moment. It seems that every time AI is appended to the concept of a blockchain, it's popular in itself. Why is AI important? Why does it matter?
Yeah, because currently blockchains they're growing very quickly, and there's a strong momentum for the development of blockchains. But they are also facing many challenges. Something like the long latency of transaction, something like the difficulty in generating programs for smart contracts, and something like the lack of security. So
lack of security
and long latency, low throughput, lower throughput, and long latency. Yeah. So to resolve these problems, we somehow need out-of-box solutions. So coincidentally, in the past 10 years, artificial intelligence also witnessed a huge development, and many complex programs can be solved by machine learning, by artificial intelligence, through learning from the data, from the history of development. So that's why we think artificial intelligence could solve many problems of blockchains.
And just to be clear for the audience, many people may misinterpret the idea of AI as somehow it's to be associated with robotics. But the reality is it's actually about interpreting humanized data in the way that we interact in the world and how we qualify that data for the benefit of not just blockchain, but for enterprise. So let's talk about the specifics. If we were trying to explain it, I just want to mention from what it says on your website. It says that the MatrixChain is designed to be the next generation blockchain, which sounds exciting in itself because we're at the third generation now. It says that Matrix leverages the latest artificial intelligence, or AI, techniques to revolutionize the landscape of cryptocurrency or blockchain.
Yes.
So let's explore how. I noticed when I was reading into your white paper that there are many ways that you are doing things that are really so far reaching and so far beyond almost anything I've seen. So the first one is your scalability. Let's talk about that. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, scalability is like the scalability for blockchains is a central problem now, because the blockchains depends on P2P network to broadcast the transactions. So that's key to any blockchains. But the problem is that every extra node, when it is introduced into the P2P network, we have the overhead to broadcast this transaction. So as long as the number of nodes increases in a P2P network, the total latency or the total latency has to increase as well.
Okay.
So this is inherent problem of some P2P network mechanism. So at present time, the confirmation time for a transaction is something like 40 minutes or even longer.
Right.
So it's So that's a key limiter for the performance of blockchains. So that's why we.
Sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, just to facilitate as we talk through it, for the listener, it's about approximately a 40-minute wait time or confirmation processing time. And that's based on the generation 1 blockchain. So it's quite a long process. People aren't going to wait for that. So let's talk about what you offer. What does MatrixChain offer as a solution to those problems of scalability?
Yeah. So basically, our invention is a hybrid POS plus POW mechanism. So the basic idea is like this: we do a random clustering of nodes in the P2P network on the basis of POS. So giving the huge number of nodes in a P2P network, we just select some delegates for these nodes on the basis of POS.
I see.
Proof of
Proof of
so
stake.
every node is selected as delegate for other nodes, and the probability of being selected is proportional to the POS. Then after this random selection process, we have just a small number of delegate nodes. Then the POW is performed only within these delegate nodes.
I see.
Because we have a small number of delegate nodes, so the broadcasting latency overhead is very slow.
Right.
So the whole thing is done in a very fast way.
Okay, so the proof of work is the whole system's bifurcated from proof of work to proof of stake. And like you said, those delicate nodes are specific to the proof of work so that the whole system isn't compromised. That's quite revolutionary in the way you've designed it. Let's talk about that in terms of TPS, in terms of the transaction speed. How fast can you be?
Our target is 1 million transactions per second.
Okay,
1 million transactions per second.
Yeah, can you say that one more time? That's a pretty amazing number.
It's a 1 million transactions per second. At the present time, we can already do something like 10,000 transactions per second. But our ultimate goal is 1 million transactions per second.
And also, just to clarify that, Professor Steve, is that running on chain, the operation, or is that running? How is that enacted through the blockchain? Is it running on the chain or off chain to do that?
On the chain.
So it's running on chain at possibly 1 million transactions.
Yeah. Yes.
Transactions per second. That's incredible. So, wow. Let's move across to the smart contracts. That already is a very incredible achievement. But one of the most overt things that you're doing that no one else is doing is combining smart contracts with AI in a really easy, usable way. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah. So currently, one problem hindering the application of smart contracts is that a user has to be able to program before they can use smart contracts, because smart contracts are basically programs. So you have to know how to program before you can use that. In our blockchain, it's different. We use deep learning technologies to translate the intention of contracts into a program. So a user does not need to write the program itself. He or she just define the intention of his contract with a natural language. With human language. Then we automatically translate the human language. We actually capture the fundamental patterns of transaction in this language. Then we translate them automatically with a deep neural network into a program.
Wow!
So this program can be further verified for everything. Then we execute this program.
So you use a deep neural network program. You can utilize that to try and translate data from my own physical self in the way I interact in the world. And you're saying that because of the way I interact and because of the facilities you have, I can make smart contracts even though I don't know how to write in Go or I don't know how to write in C++. That's phenomenal.
Exactly.
So that being said, Professor, would it be possible for anyone, anywhere, at some point to actualize a smart contract, to make a smart contract?
Yes. That's our goal, to make everybody access the smart contracts, use it, write it, and execute it.
And given also that, let's just also explain this. You are connected with arguably one of the most important technological universities in China, the Tsinghua University. This is novel concepts as well. You're leading the way, possibly, through your connection with smart contracts and AI. Let's move across now to the real world of, let's look at banks, for example, or let's look at hospitals. I raise that because you may not be aware, but there's a very, very successful blockchain, and it's in South Korea. And we won't name names, but it's been very successful because it interconnected with hospitals, it
Yeah.
interconnected with government. So in terms of banks, are you using banks?
Yes, we have some customer from the customer of banks.
Okay. And are they
Yeah.
big banks that you're using? And if they are big banks, can you tell us what your role is? What do you do with them?
Actually, we are collaborating with several very big investment banks. So the idea is that we are building the blockchain solutions for these banks. They use our blockchains to organize the user data, so
Wow.
that they can do various kinds of analytics of user data, like something like figure out the level of salary for these customers and to manage the risk if they do the mortgage or other stuffs.
I see. So in that respect, if we're talking about big banks, which is what you said, and you're talking about all the different data components, that's potentially millions of people that you could be
Mm-hmm.
servicing through those banks alone. Would that be
Yeah.
millions of people, especially in China? What about what about other services? Obviously, that's one aspect of privatized service. What about, let's say, healthcare and hospitals? Are you
Yeah.
involved in any big hospitals in China?
Yeah, we are working one of the largest hospitals in China. Is expertise on liver diseases.
Right.
So actually, our role are twofold. First, we are developing blockchain solutions to manage the patient data. The second thing that we are developing deep learning solutions for image recognition of this of the patient of the data of the patient. Basically, giving the scanning images of these patients, we do a classification of diseases of these patients, something like that.
Wow. So given that you just mentioned before, it's one of the largest hospitals, that's a really serious contract. So no doubt you do have contracts with these different entities that you're
Yes,
establishing.
we have a few contracts with banks and two contracts with hospitals.
That's it.
There's a huge contracts. Yeah.
That's incredible when you consider that you are only at the beginning of your blockchain evolution in terms of access for people to utilize the service, and already at this point in time right now, you're already very much established, which is amazing. You aren't trying to get money now to build out. You've already done some incredible things. If we move across now to expansion in terms of
Mhm.
what you could actually become, obviously you're a public blockchain, a very, very
Yes.
robust one, but could you
Mhm.
possibly have gateways into the private blockchain space?
Yes. Actually, well, our one key feature of our blockchain that we allow the integration of both public chain and private chains. Basically, we only have one public chain, but we can have many different private chains for different business,
Wow.
like hospital, like investment. And these private chains are interacting with our public chains through a gateway.
Wow.
And this gateway is controlled by actually by a control chain, which is also an essential part of blockchains. So on this control chain, we actually define the functionality and then the permission levels for different gateways, so that the different chains can be integrated in a seamless way.
Amazing. And when you think of it, you're going to financially benefit from the on-sell of the protocol, essentially, because if you're going to allow enterprises to close off and build their own blockchains, they're going to need
Yes,
the ingredients to do that, and you provide that service, that you provide that
yes,
protocol to
actually.
do it. That's
Hmm.
amazing. So that's quite a big business. The potential
Hmm.
and scope of that in China alone is huge.
Yeah,
Ha-
we
have you
it's,
have you had much interest yet in that direction since you started?
mm, actually, we are sort of starting on this side, and we are collaborating with what do I say? The one. Do you know the One Belt One Road
Yes.
initiative? China, yeah. Actually, it's a national level initiative. Yeah, we are making strategic movement into the Middle Asia. So during this process, we are gonna have many new incubators to help the development of new business for this initiative. So for these incubators, we need to help them to develop blockchain so we can integrate different businesses
Hmm.
and
So,
So yeah.
sorry to interrupt, just so that listeners know, you're talking about an initiative that
Mm-hmm.
is arguably a national policy-based initiative
Yes, of China. Yeah.
of China, but to roll out through Asia as well, but particularly in China to start off. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very big contract, and you're the AI component of that. You're
Yeah.
servicing that system through the AI. Is that correct?
Yes. Actually, there's a what do I say? Research institute for this one belt one road initiative. We are the only AI provider for this research institute. What I say is there's a research committee for supervising the whole thing. We are the partners of this committee, and we are also the only providers of this
Amazing.
AI providers for this
So,
initiative.
so you're the exclusive AI provider for a
Mhm.
national policy government initiative that is
Yeah.
huge. And
Mhm.
even and when I hear a professor say huge in China, we know it's massive because the population in China is big already. The reach of
Mhm.
this is incredible. So if we now talk about deep learning, which is a component of AI, uh,
Yeah.
how does that relate to smart contracts? How does that relate to the overall architecture of your plan and your design?
Actually, yeah. Actually, deep learning, as you say, as you mentioned, deep learning is the one component of artificial intelligence, but it's also the in the past 10 years, it's the hottest technology of artificial intelligence. Basically, the idea is actually simple. It's just the emulation of human brains.
Okay, so it's
Because
a
our
simulation.
uh,
So it's a
it's the
simulation.
emulation, not simulation. It's the emulation. Yeah, emulation. And
Oh,
basically, whatever our human brain can do with our human neural network, we can do the same thing with the deep neural networks. Uh, the idea like this.
okay.
So with the deep neural networks, we can do something like pattern recognition. We can identify the hidden patterns inside data. We can do the what do I say, sequence generation. From one sequence of input data, we can generate another sequence for whatever purposes. So in our case, we use both recurrent neural networks for program synthesis, and we also use convolutional neural networks for pattern recognition, like security, like the identification of security bugs or
Okay.
security loopholes. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing because
Mhm.
obviously deep learning is a huge buzzword right now in various industries. If we could move across now to trust, because
Mhm.
trust is something that's a buzzword. There are huge frameworks, and there's also identity systems being built inside blockchains now. Do you have any provision for trust built into your blockchain, or
Uh,
available? For example, say I wanted to do something like buy a house, as an example,
yeah.
or if I wanted to
Mhm.
rent a house. Is there any way that there's some sort of trust mechanism for ID, so that you can secure some sort of data in there and know that that's me?
Mm, yeah, actually, this can be done by different measures. First of all, we use blockchains to organize the user data, and cannot be tampered, so it's trustable. That's trust.
Okay.
And the second thing that we can use artificial intelligence techniques to analyze the data, to figure out which data are trustworthy and which data are cannot
And
be trusted.
okay.
Yeah. So um, that's yeah, that's pretty much what we can do. So
Well,
we organize data with blockchain, and we use artificial intelligence to identify the real data,
so
real meaningful data.
that's amazing. So could you give us an example in the real world so we can understand how, obviously we're thinking of maintaining as a point of value for the blockchain. How in the real world could you use that as an example? Because I mentioned before about, renting a house, for example. Obviously, we're
Mhm.
going back to that smart contract level as well. How can you use that trusted data and that information to then go and execute something simple like, rent a house?
Um, Actually, to rent a house, we first need to come out with a contract. For a user who wants to rent a house, he just describe his intention for the contract, something like the expected price of the renting, and the rules the services he want to receive, and something like this. He just kept this into something like a template, or just human language. We then use our techniques to translate it into a smart contract. Then this smart contract is executed. And during the execution process, we just constantly monitoring the data to figure out if someone breaks the rental
agreement.
Yeah. We keep track of that. So after a given period of time, we know both parties, how they are trustable, how trustable they are. We can figure out this kind of stuff.
So, Professor, would it be possible at some point not to require a device to execute a smart contract for a person? Because at the moment we rely heavily on devices like phones, for example. But from what you're saying is eventually my physical body could actually be part of the process of executing smart contracts through various recognition technologies, through fingerprinting, whatever it is that's required, but then to go and execute in that way in the real world. Would that be possible through your technology eventually?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So obviously you've been talking about how we can execute smart contracts, and what you do is you provide the behavioral data of the person, and it's analogous to certain patterns. So could you use that sort of data and that sort of identification to go and execute smart contracts easily in any field, in any industry, in anything, for any user?
I think so, because in our blockchain we can everybody, no matter he can write program or not, he can use smart contracts, and we also have a mechanism to build contracts for different parties involved in smart contracts. So we believe our technology can be used by anybody anywhere around the world.
So anybody, anywhere. We don't need all the developing language anymore. We can just have a smart contract, sort it on the blockchain, and be a normal person and not be a developer. That is truly, truly amazing. And all the people who aren't technologically savvy or aren't what we call devs, they can access smart contracts and be in control. It's amazing. If we could talk about now some of the features, because in your white paper it explains 4 of them: easier, safer, faster, more flexible. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Faster. By faster I mean the shorter latency during the confirmation of the contracts. That's basically the hybrid POS plus POW stuff I just mentioned. The second thing is easier. By easier, we actually means the users can have their smart contract synthesized by our technologies instead of by writing the program by themselves.
Okay.
Safer, I mean we use deep learning technologies to automatically identify the vulnerabilities inside the smart contracts, and use deep learning technologies to improve the robustness of these programs. And by flexibility, we mean that we do not need to fine-tune the parameters of blockchain by humans. We actually the blockchain itself it just evolve. Because we have built-in artificial intelligence to learn from the history, to automatically adjust the parameters in an incremental manner. So you never need to abruptly change the parameters. It's just evolution process. It always adapted to the usage situation of the whole network.
That's amazing. So there's no manual human manipulation. It's all automated by AI. That's fascinating. Could you explain a little bit about the ecosystem, because that's raised in your white paper as well? Just in simple terms, what are you referring to when you talk about the ecosystem of the matrix chain?
The ecosystem actually, the first level is our blockchain technology, and on top of that, we can develop applications. This can be by us or by anybody who are interested in our blockchains. This application can be the manipulation of data on blockchains can be, and also we can outsourcing of blockchain building technologies for other private blockchains.
Which is exciting. That's amazing. So if we go across now and we focus on some specifics, because they're also highlighted in your white paper, there's the intelligent contract, which is what you were talking about before. That's the intelligent contract is one that doesn't require programming, where everyone can access it. It's universally available. Then we talk about is it AGIS, where it's the AI protection, automation, sniffle holes, makes your assets more secure. Can you tell us what on earth does that mean? What is this?
Actually, the lack of security is a huge problem for blockchains and smart contracts. So we actually have three different technologies to address the security problem. The first set of formal verification. Formal verification is a sort of complicated mathematical technologies. It's invented by a CMU professor Ed Clark. He's a Turing Award winner. And the idea is that they translate the smart contracts into a model of logics. That they use the mathematics to prove the logics if they are satisfied, if they satisfy giving rules or properties, something like that. The second technology is deep learning based technology to identify the loopholes inside the programs. Basically, we use convolutional neural network to automatically identify the different patterns which could lead to the failure of execution during the execution process. Right. The third thing is dynamic technique. Basically, we use a GAN network, which is a generative adversarial network. So basically, we evolve both the smart contracts and the attacks at the same time, so that we can make the smart contracts more and more robust to under attack. So these are dynamic techniques. So basically, we have these three different techniques to make smart contracts more robust.
Okay, so obviously it's quite technical, clearly, and that's fine, because what's really clear though, just for the viewers, is that there are many different means or facets to the smart contract itself. It's not just a simple thing, and the way you've approached it is to really unpack and really build out the quality of it so that it is easily applied. If we move now across to another framework that I wanted to understand a bit more, could you tell us about how the reinforcement learning framework works? Why is that relevant to your overall design?
Actually, that's very simple, because blockchain, as I mentioned before, our blockchain is constantly evolving during the process. Yeah. So during the evolving process, it's actually a reinforcement learning process, because at a given moment we can adjust certain parameters. Of course, it's by AI in a distributed manner. If we adjust something, we can see the rewards of this adjustment. Sometimes we make it better, sometimes we make it worse, but somehow we can learn the reward. So this whole thing can be organized into a reinforcement learning framework. Amazing. So after a given period of time, we can know the cumulative effect of each adjustment and figure out how we can adjust different parameters and make the whole thing running more smooth.
Okay. Wow, thank you for explaining that. And just in terms of moving on from that down into the more challenging topic of nodes, of the computer nodes, can you tell us about how they work within the AI system you designed and why they are so important in relation to mining, perhaps? And there's a thing called the MatrixChain Monte Carlo, or the MCMC computation. So in relation to those things, just very simply, why is that important, and why is it innovative and unique to the matrix chain?
Actually, the mining depends on hash functions. The hash function is fine. It does work. The only issue of hash-based mining is that the hash function does not have a direct value for human society. Okay. It makes sense for the cryptocurrency, but it doesn't have a value in the real world. So we use a different mining function, which is just as you mentioned, the MCMC. So MCMC is a universal pattern in Bayesian computation. Bayesian computation is is a fundamental part of the modern statistics, and many machine learning technologies are based on these Bayesian computations. And the MCMC, I will not explain the details of MCMC. It's quite complicated, but the MCMC computation has certain characteristics which make it proper as a mining function. First, it's compute intensive. You have to learn a lot of data points before you can finish the computation. The second thing that you cannot predict the results of the computation.
Okay.
You have to compute, but you cannot from the beginning. You do not know which data you will get after computation. And the third thing that even though you cannot know the final results, but you can evaluate how close you are to the final results.
Okay.
So you can judge the quality of mining. So with these characteristics, the MCMC can serve as a mining function, and at the same time, it's a basic pattern of many different machine learning applications. So we can use this for meaningful, for useful, for computation with universal values.
That's amazing. And I noticed that you were explaining how there was a bifurcation of the proof of work and the proof of stake, and you explained the different components. In terms of forkability, is there any forking risk with your blockchain, or is it secure in that respect? So that's important because a lot of people worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, why we use a reinforcement learning procedure to do the parameter updating is that we do not want to have any hard forks.
Okay.
So we believe with our technology, we never have hard forks.
That's amazing, because that provides a security for the system. It means that it's a secure network, and you can trust that it will maintain its own viability as one blockchain. Let's move on to data now. How are you dealing with data regulations that require companies with certain countries, for example, if you expand, or even in different regions of China, for example? Just talk about regulation and the external influence on blockchain itself. Are there any issues you're having? Are you planning on going global, or have you moved beyond the borders of China in any way?
So far, we do not want to move. We just want to stay inside China.
Okay.
Because we think we are fine. Because first of all, our mining is meaningful, so we are not a waste of energy. So we think it's totally satisfies the spirit of Chinese government kind of regulations.
Right.
Yeah. The second thing is that. Actually, we are. What do I say? So, sorry.
Well, I was going to ask you: are you getting? No, you're doing great. Are you? Have you had regulation support from, local levels of government, or because obviously there's many people who are concerned at some point in the past about regulation and about compliance and that sort of thing. Are you? Do you feel that you're in a safe environment? Obviously, you're secure in your contracts with very important, very large companies like banks and hospitals and even national policy initiatives. But in terms of from the top down, do you feel comfortable with the degree of regulation in China and the way that blockchain's moving?
I think so, because in China, the ICO is not allowed, but blockchain technology is totally okay. And the blockchain blockchain technology is just technology. So even many China banks, they have institutions for the research of blockchains. So it's totally okay. And for us, we are just technology developers of blockchains. So the regulation is fine. We are totally legitimate.
That's exciting to hear that you have an open door to development. If we move across now to the cross-chain involvement, this is exciting, and I really wanted to ask you about this. Is that not only are you looking at those gateways, as we talked about, between public and private entities and blockchains, but you also have a capacity to be cross-chain in terms of cross other blockchain. Like, for example, Quantum, for example, Neo. We were actually doing our research, and when I was trying to unpack, various potential connections, it came up that Qtum and Neo could actually theoretically cross-collaborate and working a cross-chain environment. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because there's a couple of documents we found that suggest you could, and you might work with those Chinese main chains. Is there a plan to do that?
Actually, I'm not an expert on this. First of all, our technology allows integration of different chains into. I would say our technology allows collaboration of different chains, no matter it's Ethereum or it's EOS, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's doable because we have this gateways.
Mm-hmm.
So with gateway, we can define the permission rules and the exchange rate for different coins,
mm-hmm.
something like that. So we have at the same time, our gateways are totally distributed. It's not centralized gateways. It's just distributive.
Okay.
And so
theoretically, it's possible. As you said, you gave some examples of EOS, Ethereum,
yes.
But I really do respectfully have to bring you back into China. Is that
mm-hmm.
there are some really serious big blockchains, and I do need to name them because they have come up in some articles of Quantum and Neo. Theoretically, it's possible, as you said, for them to link with you, theoretically. But has there been any interest that you're aware of or that you can discuss, or is that not something you can discuss yet?
Actually, I'm a technology person.
Okay. Well,
I'm not dealing with other companies.
Right.
Yeah, so
but what is exciting, though, is clearly it's possible, and at least the listener can understand that you are not in direct competition with those other blockchains because, you're designed to service the AI component. So that's really exciting. If we move across now to the business enterprise component, can you tell us a bit more about the Belt and Road project? Because we touched on that before. That's a national policy level project. It's huge.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Actually, the Silk Road of China, in ancient China?
Yes, I do actually.
Yeah, so we actually export silks from China to Europe.
Yes.
European countries, yeah. So that's very important way of communication in the history.
Mm-hmm.
So now China government is initializing a new initiative following this spirit. Okay. We want to build a channel from China to Europe through the Middle Asia. Yeah, that's basically one belt, one road initiative.
Okay, can I stop you there for a minute to just explain that perhaps again? Is that it's called the, let's be clear, I want to make this go, the Belt and Road Project. So I'll clarify that. So
one belt, one road project. Yeah.
So people can go one belt.
Yeah.
So people can go and research. Okay, so we can go and research that. And what you're saying is that it's not just a country-specific project. That's why I was asking before about the global components of country-to-country, regulations, because you're planning on essentially being the AI part of that whole project that could potentially go. Well, let's be honest. You could potentially go all the way to Europe in that influence, in that role, because you're the only AI component of that whole project. In terms of the
it's not the whole project because I would say I make it clear. It's a whole project, national level project, and in one component of this project is a research institute,
right?
Supervising the research activities for this initiative, and inside this research institution, there's only AI providers.
I see, and
so we're providers for the whole initiative. We're the only providers for this research institute.
That makes perfect sense. So I'll clarify that so that obviously we don't misrepresent. You are the exclusive AI component of the institute of that learning facility, that center.
Yes, exactly.
But the point I wanted to make is that it's unlikely that any other center or institute exists whereby AI is the focus. So essentially, yes, that's all true, but still the AI is what you represent, and you could potentially be involved in that project right through into Europe indirectly because the scope of this is huge.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So you must be excited about that. You must be immensely excited to be invited into that.
Yes, a lot of work. Yeah.
So did you have to apply to get that contract?
I'm sorry.
Well, did you have to apply to get the contract through in the belt? Because obviously you're part of that research center, and the agreements must be there. So there would have been other companies or tenders for that. So did you have to apply to be part of it, of the
Uh,
of the
uh,
initiative?
Actually, in under this initiative, there are many different projects going on.
Right.
But because we are the AI providers for that research institution, so any project supervised by that institution will only have us as a AI solution provider.
Okay.
So for this kind of projects, we do not need to apply application. We just directly get involved.
Right. Well, moving from that, it seems that there's some serious players or some serious stakeholders from the government's position. One of them is the Deputy Director for General of China's Central Political and Legal Commission. So there's some really important people involved behind who are driving this initiative. Would you say?
Yes.
That's
Of course. It's China President Xi Jinping. He's fundamentally he's a fundamental
architect.
Initiator of the whole thing.
Oh, right. So
Yeah.
he initiated it. That's really fascinating, being the president.
Yeah.
If we can move now across from that incredible, that's amazing. It really is. That's a lot of countries. But if we can now refocus across to the other side of the globe, to the Silicon Valley, it seems that the Matrix is doing something there possibly. Do you know anything about that with the Silicon Valley laboratory?
Yeah. Actually, I have been working in Silicon Valley for 4 years, and of course now I'm living in China. But the problem that I have many students, many of my undergraduate students, they went to the States and study in Berkeley, in Stanford.
Okay.
They will graduate in probably a few years, and some of them already graduated there, and some of them will graduate in the future.
Right.
So they also want to make contributions for this project. So I have to have a place for them to work in Silicon Valley. That's why we established a laboratory in Silicon Valley.
Okay, that's fascinating.
So we work there.
So you're having a Western influence. Do you think that that's going to build out some sort of, I guess, enterprise, and also your non-profit component? But do you think that's going to eventually evolve into some sort of mainstay position in the West, where you can have?
Of course, yeah, of course, we are going to do that as long as the whole thing moves smoothly.
That's very exciting. And are you likely to partner with those universities? Because you mentioned Berkeley and you mentioned Stanford. Are they facilitating? Are they involved in this process? Surely they are.
Not yet. I have many collaborations from personal collaborations with other professors in those schools. Yeah, but obviously we do not have that yet.
Right.
Of course, we are seeking collaborations on blockchain technologies.
I see. So you're actually actively trying to seek out partnerships and connections. That's
of course.
And given it's still early days, there's obviously a lot of potential for contractual agreements with those institutions. If you could talk about other centres now, the Pathology Quality Control Evaluation Centre. You are clearly involved with the diagnosis and curing of diseases through your technology. Can you talk about how important that is, that work, for the real world and for health?
The problem, actually, the problem in China is critical. It's just critical. You know, in current medicine technology, we more and more depend on medical images. Actually, the number of images is increasing by like 60% per year. But the number of doctors is just increasing, grows by 6% per year. So we have more pictures than people who can read the images. So in China, the problem is even more serious.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why we want to develop automatic techniques to read the images, to make diagnosis on the basis of these images. So that's critical.
So MatrixChain saves lives potentially, because if you don't have it, well, realistically, from what you're saying, if you don't have enough doctors to service the patients, if this technology services that problem or addresses that problem, that's saving lives potentially, because it's picking up issues in health. Amazing. Let's talk about some partners and investors. Every blockchain needs investors. Every blockchain needs partners. So tell us about some of the key ones. For example, Cybernaut. What's their role? Let's talk about any other like Youth Credit Management. Any other company you know of that you can talk about that's a key component of the partnering and investing aspects of MatrixChain.
I'm sorry, the receiving
So,
not good.
I was just saying, could you tell us a bit about the key partners or the key investors?
Partners, yeah. Partners, you mean investment partners
Yes,
or?
the people who help build out your blockchain. There must have been contributors. So I read through when I was reading your information about companies, for example, like Cybernaut Investments. They were really important. There were private equity funds that were involved. So did you have private funding to build out and start up your blockchain?
Actually, I'm not the right person to answer this question.
Okay, that's okay.
I do not know any details.
That's okay. We can assume that given that you also have a CEO who represents, I'm sure he would be aware of that. But let's move across now to the exchanges. In that clearly exchanges are an imperative. You need to operate through exchanges. Can you tell us a bit more about your plans of expansion in South Korea or in Japan? Are there plans to move across in that direction? Do you know?
Actually, Probably Owen should answer your question because I only focus on technology.
That's okay. What I'll do is I'll make sure I have
this question.
No, well, I will say, that it's suggestions that you will be expanding, and I'll speak with Owen at some stage as CEO. But let's move across now to the roadmap. This is important. So, roadmap from present day now, moving into the next projection of the next two quarters. What's happening?
Actually, currently we're working on developing the public chain and the whole infrastructure, and we'll make it public by the end of September.
Okay.
So the matrix chain will be there by September 2018. By the end of this year, we will have something like the program synthesis for smart contracts. We will have the deep learning based security of smart contracts by the end of this year.
Okay.
So in the next year, by the June of 2019, we will have a mining hardware.
Okay. So mining hardware.
And many different deep learning, machine learning applications.
Okay.
So by the end of 2019, we should have everything ready as well ecosystem.
So clearly, it's a long-term project. For many people in cryptocurrency, they're going to be thinking, "Oh, that's a really long time." But in the meantime, you have many different milestones to achieve. You're going to be very busy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are sort of using very complicated technologies, so it takes time. But we have confidence. Yeah, we can make that happen.
And also, clearly, you're already integrated into the real world through your contracts, and you're going to establish more and more contracts clearly. But if we talk about the token itself, so in terms of the structure, we don't need to go into the details, that's on the white paper. But in terms of people accessing those tokens, when are the key dates, the times, when people can go and access the currency?
Again, you should ask Owen for this.
Okay, I certainly will. So if you want to know more, obviously you can go to the Matrix website. But if we're not focused on one key aspect of the tokenization, I really wanted to talk about that in relation to the foundation. You mentioned this before. There's a foundation built inside MatrixChain, and there's aspects of that relate to how some of the token allocation. So let's talk about the foundation first. What is the foundation, and what do they do?
Actually, the foundation is a non-profit organization. It manages the development, the ICO, and everything of Matrix. So they organize the ICO and manage the money. Manage the fund to support the development of Matrix chain.
Okay.
And all the details you should ask Owen for that.
Yes, I will. But I wanted to ask you in terms of we mentioned this before with the token in relation to that foundation. It's important to unpack that it makes it clear, the suggestion that perhaps some of that would be unlocked in terms of not being accessible. But my understanding is that there is a period of time in which that can be locked up, and is to be so for a period of time, so that it is not accessible. The foundation doesn't access that component. The people who are in that foundation. So meaning that not that particular aspect of it that is not accessible to utilize, meaning that for everybody else who are using the tokens and interacting, it makes it much more scarce than what people may be thinking, because there's an allocation specifically for that foundation. And to my understanding, having read through and unpacked that, is that there is a part that will be closed off that for a period of time. Are you aware of that at all?
Actually, because you mentioned this morning, this problem this morning.
Yes, we were discussing that.
But honestly, I don't understand what he's talking about.
Right.
So,
well, my understanding, having had a chance.
Just directly.
Well, that's. Well, thank you
I'm
for
sorry.
that.
I'm totally sorry.
No, that's fine, Stephen. I mean, you're doing so well considering how late it is. I really appreciate that. But my understanding, having discussed it,
because I'm just an technology person.
well, obviously, I have to try and sort of address as much as I can. So I respect, obviously, your knowledge. Let's move across now, Steve, to the vision. What is it to close off? What is it that you really want to see MatrixChain become? What do you believe it's possible? Let's just say even in a short term of 5 years. What do you think is going to happen for this blockchain?
I think we are going to be a great blockchain. Of course, I do not want to say we will replace Ethereum or anything, but our objective is to build what do I say? Ultimate blockchain which can service which can release the potential of blockchain technologies and make our world a better place. As I sincerely believe we could do that.
Well, it's clear, just to recap a few things before I can finish the address and finish this very, very interesting and very robust information about Matrix. It's been a real honor to actually hear about how impressively detailed not just your white paper, but how detailed well, let me say, how far you've come already in the blockchain space, but also in the real economy. We talk about that, but you really have moved into the real world space of China. So to recap, you are a proof of work, proof of stake model, but you are very clearly not going to be forkable. You are well and truly, you've entered the markets, you're in hospitals, you're in banks. You have a really robust technology. Incredibly, this is the big thing, you have created a way for AI to integrate with smart contracts so that you don't require developing languages to utilize smart contracts in the real world. You are going to utilize things like deep learning, a component of AI. There's so much that you are doing. You're helping people literally save lives through integrating the services of AI into health departments and faculties. So I could go on and on from what you've taught me today, but I won't. I'll finish off by saying MatrixChain is potentially going to change the landscape in China. Certainly will change the blockchain landscape, doing something that we haven't seen before. Absolute honor to talk to you, Professor Steve Deng. And you are the Chief AI Scientist for a reason. You know exactly what you're doing. And I look forward sincerely in speaking with you in the future. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was
My
great.
pleasure.